Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to the Four Verticals podcast, episode 87. Here, this is the pre-show. By the way, if you're new here, this is the time of the show where we sort of began a little bit early. The actual show is not began. This is sort of just to get people an opportunity to enter into the live chat and whatnot. And as I do that, I should probably put this out on Twitter. So, as you can see, this is what it is. It's the pre-show. The actual recording on Spotify has not started yet. So if you're wondering if this is being recorded along with the Spotify version, it is not. So we will get the show officially started here in just a second. And what I'm going to do here is put this out on Twitter. So give me just a second. As you can tell, this is should have done this a little bit earlier, but that's okay. I'm going to put that in, put the link out for you guys. So for those of you who are on Twitter right now, I'm perusing that you can find this, get the link, and tweet is out. So letting people know we are live. Of course, we'll wait a few minutes and then we'll actually start the show. Again, the recorded podcast version, the one that goes on Spotify, not the YouTube version necessarily, will be put on here in just a second. So folks to hop in here. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. Of course, we'll be talking about a lot of different things. The Nico situation, I did a video on that on Friday. Of course, a lot has somewhat changed since then. He's no longer on the team. Of course, now with that happening, sort of means a brand new outlook on the spring portal. So that's something else I would have to probably consider going forward. So, or at least consider knowing that has happened. We're probably going to have some at least recalibration in terms of expectations for the portal, at least for this transfer cycle. So, fun times. So hopefully everyone's ready. Plan accordingly. It's been warm here in Jacksonville. Today, as I'm checking right now, it is 82 degrees here in Jacksonville. It's been warm the entire week. It'll cool down a little bit tomorrow, but it'll still be pretty warm. Still around 80. Then we'll be near 90 pretty much the rest of the week. So not too bad. If you're a warm weather fan in the Southeast, enjoy it. If you're in the Midwest, then you're still doing snow, I believe. Some areas are still getting snow. How about that? It's according to the meteorological calendar and the real life calendar. It's still considered spring. So not sure what's going on with that. All right, I think we're gonna get started here on the actual show. So I'm about to record here in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Four Verticals podcast, episode 87. We are about 3 episodes away from being 10 episodes away to the 100 episode mark, so about 13 away. So we're getting very close. Thank you so much for joining in. Of course, I have a loaded show as always as I exit out of the recording audio. I got a loaded show for you guys today. Of course, the fallout with Nico in Tennessee. We did a video on that on Friday, sort of an update on what's been happening, and also some other news as well with Kent State. But of course, Nico ends up leaving Tennessee. I'll give you guys sort of a final conclusion, or I guess the final thoughts on it. Then we'll move into spring portal. Of course, we touched on this on Thursday's show about my initial thoughts, not knowing this was going to happen. So sort of recalibration expectations just a little bit. Got some spring game thoughts. I got some interesting stuff going on here with made a little of an error there. There we go. Of my notes. Got some best returning QBs in the Power 4. Who is the best returning QB in the Power 4? That's a question now with Nico moving on from Tennessee. Fantastic Four released a new clip. Some recent issues, I guess, some concerns. don't get into a rapid fire Q&A. So got a big show here. Again, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. We got 5 subscribers now. Had 4 last week. Now we have 5. Please continue to do so. Subscribe. If nothing happens, I don't sign you up for anything. I don't, knock on your door or force you to sign a form or send you stuff in the mail or call you or text you. It's completely free. If nothing happens, like we don't bombard you with emails and brochures and stuff through the mail or virtual mail. It keeps the show mostly free. I don't have to put this behind a paywall through Patreon or something. I understand people have to do that. We don't do that here. This is a completely free show. That's it. And we want to keep it that way. If you guys do that, subscribe, like the streams, whatnot, follow us on Twitter, podcast feed. Helps us out and helps you out too, because you get this show for free. God love, you got a lot of intel coming in around this time of the year because spring practice is wrapping up for a lot of folks, and pretty soon, and actually just a couple of weeks from now, we'll be doing season projections. So projection season is coming, and we are excited, very, very excited for that, and a lot of fun things. So I'm playing for that. So make sure you subscribe, like the streams, the individual videos, and we do them, like the Tennessee Nico. If there's any breaking news or anything, we'll hop on here. Got a busy week. We have, of course, do the show today, show Thursday. Star Wars Celebration, I believe, begins on Friday. They'll do some big panels like the Ahsoka panel. I believe it's on Saturday, I think, or Friday. I have to check the schedule again. But that's happening this weekend. Of course, Easter's this weekend, so it's going to be a busy week. Busy ends of the week. Of course, we have Thunderbolts coming out soon. Things will start getting, it may seem quiet right now, but trust me, they will begin to ratchet up a little bit here as we, of course, move into preview magazine season, projection season. Of course, College Bowl 26 will be coming out. I'll give you guys my thoughts on that by the time July comes around. Then the season will start. Well, at least games will start while fall camp. So strap in. If it seems quiet right now, and yes, we had the Nico news was a bit of an earthquake. Ironically, there was one yesterday in California. With a small ripple in the waters, if you will. We'll continue to get more of that. And not to mention, too, we also have ACC, SEC spring meetings. By the way, the ACC spring meetings are here in Jacksonville, Billy Island, Ritz-Carlton. I haven't stayed there before. I've seen it before. It's a beautiful area, especially around this time of the year. But a lot of things are going to be happening, a lot of major events, and we'll be here to cover it. So I'm going to get some water real quick, the ceremonial chug of water, and then we will get into this Nico stuff, some final thoughts on it, because I really don't feel like talking about this anymore. It's already, I got mad, if you will, on the Friday videos. So one more time of going over the Nico stuff. We will move on from this, and then we will move into some happier topics, hopefully. Okay, so as I mentioned on the top of the show, Nico Iamaleava is no longer of Tennessee. He's entering the transfer database. He will be in the transfer portal when it opens, I believe, Wednesday. So he will be available. Other folks are entering their names in there. So I already gave you guys my initial thoughts on this when this was going down Friday. So if you want to have my full thoughts on this, then go watch that video. Here's what I'll say here. Like I mentioned in the video, it didn't matter which direction this was going to go. If he ended up staying and they ended up working something out, or he left, it wasn't going to fix the issue. Like we were still going to have this issue of no guardrails with any of this, player movement, revenue sharing, whatever. And I still believe it. I still believe with whether Nico would have stayed in Tennessee or he left, much like Josh Pate, there are no winners in this situation. Nico loses because he doesn't get his money, obviously. And now he has to go to a lesser program, more than likely, because now everyone sees him as the villain now. Everyone, Nico, I don't want to deal with him. And then Tennessee loses because they lose their starting quarterback. The guy who they were building, Josh Heupel and company, were building their offense around for the past 2 years or so, because he came out as a freshman in 2022 or 2023, and that was like the Joe Milton year, or the first full year of the only full year of Joe Milton, and then he moves on. So you have Tennessee and Josh Heupel planning this out for a couple of years, having Nico being the centerpiece of Tennessee football for the next couple of years. Now he's gone. Now they have to probably go find they will have to find another quarterback because they need depth there. They have guys on the roster, certainly, if you're looking at this first from the Tennessee perspective. They have guys on the roster who are, I think it was the Merlinger kid, and they have the George kid. They're not really, I guess Merlinger is somewhat ready to start. He's been there, I guess, the longest, I think. George is a freshman. They're going to have to find another quarterback. There is no doubt. They're going to have to go in the portal, whoever enters in. There's certainly restrictions on that, both for Nico and for really any players in the SEC who are transferring out. Just a reminder, you cannot transfer to other schools in the SEC. That's a rule, or at least a bylaw or whatever that's been around for a little bit. I will say Josh Payne mentioned this on his show and multiple appearances yesterday. While that is true with the whole, no interconference transferring for the SEC in the spring window, which like it was last year, no one has ever challenged it legally. So just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean it can't be done. So we'll see on that. But at the moment, I don't expect any interconference transfer stuff. So, like, for example, I don't expect Nico to, transfer to Texas A&M because of the rules. And again, they could legally challenge it. There's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that doesn't say you can't. But I don't expect it to happen. But it won't surprise me if you hear some rumblings about Nico's camp potentially, or the school he's intending to transfer to, maybe challenging it legally with the SEC. But again, as I mentioned on Friday, the adults in the room made the mess. There's no doubt about this. That the adults in the room made the mess. This wouldn't really have happened this way if there were guardrails. Let me just say this too. Much like a lot of folks who are mad about this, that I do blame a lot of this on the fact of there's a lack of leadership. There is a sort of lack of structure. But I think what is clear here and what is obvious now to a lot of people who were sort of ignoring this for a long time, especially the NFL flybys, that unlike the NFL, and I'll give the NFL credit here, they have structure, right? The commissioner, Roger Goodell, you have certain structures and rules, actual rules, not just things people say, actual written rules that make sense and are reasonable, that, are guardrails for certain things. So something like this doesn't happen randomly. College football has no structure. They have no structure. They have no one in charge. Think about this. Could you, as a college football fan, whether you're a diehard or not, can you name anyone who is in charge of college football? You cannot. You can literally not name anyone who is in charge of college football. Now you can name names who claim, or not a claim, but would be figureheads, like, for example, Tony Petitti of the Big Ten, Greg Sankey would be up there. I guess Nick Saban as an ambassador of the sport, retired head coach. But those are just names. That's not a single person who is in charge or would be labeled a commissioner, which is why people like Josh Pate, up to including me, have been advocating for a commissioner to step in, to actually have someone who is officially a part, who is not tied to the NCAA, can actually make reasonable, judgmental rules, regulations, sort of control this stuff. Because the way NIL is working right now, agents and agents, along with who am I leaving out? I guess agents, people like that are benefiting. They're and lawyers. Yeah, lawyers are the ones who are benefiting from this. They're the ones who are striving right now. And that's just the way it is right now. I mean, there's so much confusion and disorganization where it's at the point where agents and lawyers are literally the ones who are thriving off of this, whereas players and coaches are not. Because if you think about this, if you're a head coach right now in college football, a major head coach in college football, like when you go into spring, and this is the insanity of structure and whatnot, you're literally going to spring every single year from now until whenever changes are made, that you fear players leaving. You fear star players either leaving or wanting contract negotiations, stuff like that. Like, that's stuff that really does not make me happy that the sport has turned into. I don't like the fact that this has turned into the NFL. I don't like the fact this and look, I know a lot of folks wanted this to happen, or at least wanted players to be paid. And look, I'm all for that. I'm not against paying the players. I'm not against revenue sharing, whatever. But when you don't have rules in place, things like this happen. Like I said on Friday, things like this will happen. In fact, things like this were almost as close to happening in the back last December. Like Nico and some other players were because there are certain schools, not just Tennessee and Nico, but certain other schools had players bring up, hey, since we're in the playoffs, shouldn't I be getting a cut of the pie here? Should I be getting more money here? Can we, renegotiate the contract here because we are in the playoffs, right? Should we get more money? Let me also say this too. This also is certainly with things that people like Josh Pitt have revealed lately. This should also, by the way, burst the bubble of certain individuals. Some of them know my own personal life. Whenever I've brought up the whole factor of of players sitting out the playoff, and when I brought this up to people who I know personally, they said, "Man, are you crazy? Players aren't going to sit out the playoff." Oh, you sure about that? Because now you see this contract stuff. This is what we were referring to. Like, trust me. Unless things change, unless there's no structure and actual people in charge here, not just faceless people who claim to be in charge but they're not. Unless there's any real structure here, you are going to see this play out before playoff games. Yeah, you will see star players sitting out, not because of injury, not because of I'm going to hurt because of I'm in the playoffs. Not that. We were not referring to that. We were referring to contract disputes. That's what's going to happen. That's what we were referring to, and what Josh Pitt was referring to years ago, by the way, of players sitting out of playoff games. Not because of injury, not because of draft concern stuff. It's contract disputes and wanting more money because, we're in the playoffs now because I need more money. And when you're in the NFL, you don't have, like, for example, Baker Mayfield, Buccaneers, the team I cheer for, a team we sometimes cover here. We cover here at least during relevant times during the season, I guess, draft coming up. But for example, Baker Mayfield last year for Tampa didn't go up to Todd Bowles and Jason Light and the entire organization saying, "Hey, we made it to the playoffs. Should I get some more money?" Like that doesn't happen in the NFL. It's happening in college football. Don't believe me, or don't believe me and Josh Pitt? Okay, not me and Josh Pitt. We're just idiots now. We don't know what we're talking about. Okay, whatever, fine. You can still call us idiots for warning you guys that this will happen during the playoffs. Trust me, it's going to happen. Unless something unforeseen happens here and changes are made and we actually have structure, you will have players sitting out of playoff games, not because of fear of injury or because of, oh no, I'm just because I play a football game, I'm getting injured and now my NFL draft stock is going to lower down somehow. It's not because of that anymore. It's because of them wanting more money and them actually sitting out and pouting and getting mad, and not to mention not having proper people representing them. Because the folks who are representing some of these players isn't just agents and lawyers, it's their parents who are not necessarily qualified to make those decisions. And I'm not saying parents are dumb, they're not. But I'm just saying in terms of making decisions like this, like handling contracts and stuff, they're not skilled to do that. They didn't go to, some of these major universities and got 10 degrees and how to make business deals, and they don't understand the art, the art of the deal and stuff like that. They're not skilled in that too. That's another thing too that needs to be overhauled as well. But I think the big the bigger issue here and what the overarching problem is here is the lack of structure, and that the sport, with this being what it is and what it's turning into, I think a lot of folks are starting to realize that now, even though you should have realized that years ago, but whatever, I guess, welcome to the party. A lot of this, I believe, is on the feet of folks who want changes to be made, or at least folks who are making changes that don't care about college football. Talking about you, TV execs, talking about you, those people who couldn't even name a head coach of South Florida, Alex Galesh, by the way, couldn't even name the head coach of Cincinnati, who is Satterfield, the guy who was at Louisville. So those people who are making decisions are in charge of the sport, the TV execs. It's been obvious for a long time, but I think you're starting to see it now. Those are the people who wanted playoff expansion, who wanted this to happen, who really couldn't care less with the player, right? Because, I have never seen any players or whatever advocating for playoff expansion. I've seen players advocating for getting paid, but I haven't seen anyone or any of these players being consoled about, what do they want? What can we do to help you out, make this easier for you? And I believe these TV execs and all these people, like the folks most of you may know these people, at least the name of these people, these TV execs, these, high mustache, sweater vest wearing people, they don't care about college football. At least they don't care about the well-being of the sport. They care about themselves. Me, Josh Pitt, guys over at Cover 3, and Pat McAfee to a certain extent too, we care about college football. We care about the well-being of college football, not because of a single player, not of a single team. I care about the health of the sport and the trajectory of the sport. And the trajectory right now is horrible. It's not good. And I really hope those people who are TV execs who happen to be listening to this or other shows, please listen, because the more and more you get down this road, it's sort of like the example Josh Pate has used about, someone poisoning the Mississippi River out in like north, like in St. Louis, someone in New Orleans or in, I don't know, somewhere around the river or Memphis, for example, would be like, well, yeah, sure, the water's poisoned in St. Louis, but it's fine here, right? Well, it won't be in a couple of days, right? Because, the river and the current, what comes upstream must come downstream, right? So eventually, problems that may not seem problems are like right now will become problems in the future unless things change, or unless you have the foresight to understand, hey, these decisions we're making are going to have consequences, right? Well, people mention, players getting paid and revenue sharing, stuff like that. Look, I'm all for that, but much like Josh Pate a couple years ago or almost half a decade ago, you want players to get paid. Where's the structure at? There's no structure. Okay, all right, you can go that way, but I'm just, people like me and him were, at least me behind the scenes, man, I didn't have a show back then, but me privately, much like him, we're saying, look, I want players to get paid too, but when there's no structure in place, this is, you're going to have some unintended issues that come around the corner, and here we are. And unfortunately, this isn't the only thing, too, that's going to become an issue, or at least a issue that becomes a bigger problem down the road. I think one of them is definitely the expanded playoff. But, people, I say that, but the people don't listen. So that's my thoughts on the whole Nico Tennessee situation. It sucks. There's no winners here at all. The adults never made the best. Agents and lawyers will continue to thrive under this environment unless there's structure here, unless someone smart enough, whether it is Josh Pate or someone else, someone who actually understands the sport, cares about the well-being of the sport, actually cares about college football, not just looking at it as a product or something you can put on your streaming service. Unless that happens, well, I don't know, that's kind of ironic, right? Did a segment this time last week about is college football dead? Well, it may not feel like it's dead. Go look at sports like NASCAR and baseball, for example. Like, for example, baseball, MLB. It's so dead right now, at least the field baseball is so dead right now that ESPN is literally, this is your final year of doing college baseball. And that's kind of insane to think about, but you realize a lot of the things, a lot of the changes the sport of baseball has made. I'm not a big fan of it, but at least using it as a general example, that's the route college football is headed down. And it's headed down the route of baseball and NASCAR, where you start to make changes and not necessary changes, things that were not necessarily broken. You begin to alienate your fan base. And then even more, relatable example here because of our show, because we cover Marvel and Star Wars, sort of the position where Marvel is right now. You look at Marvel right now, they've made so many wrong decisions and changes and, leadership changes as well, that while they didn't seem big issues back then, now you're starting to see the repercussions of that. And in college football, that's what we're dealing with. We are dealing with repercussions of decisions that were made years ago. And yes, on the surface, some of those, brand new, oh man, look at this NIL and, transfer portal, man, it's so shiny and so cool. And now we get because of NIL, we're getting the video game back. That's all great. But as long as there's no structure, no commissioner to control this, like they do in the NFL and in the NBA and stuff like that, it's going to be basically the Wild West, right? Sort of like how YouTube was back in the day, where people were like uploading like literal movies. By the way, like when I was a youth, when I was perusing old school YouTube, people would literally post like entire Pirates of the Caribbean movies on there on YouTube. It was like insane. People were literally doing that. I was like, then all of a sudden, copyright rules started getting more enforced and whatnot. And now YouTube is what it is right now. College football, to a certain extent, at least, is somewhat similar to what YouTube used to be. It's the Wild West. There's no control. There's no standards or regulations or anything like that. That's where college football is right now. It's just too crazy right now. Now we're seeing all of this weird stuff, and it's sad. It's sad that it's come to this. It's sad that no one outside of like me and the guys on Cover 3 and Josh Pate have been advocating for control and advocating for someone to harness this in, or at least someone who is reasonable and would make level-headed decisions, not just a nameless and faceless sweater vest and bow tie person. Unless that changes, we're going to continue to see this to happen. And like I mentioned, Even though people will continue to say this will never happen, you will eventually see players sitting out of playoff games, not because of injury concerns or NFL stuff, because of contract disputes. That's why. That's what we were afraid of. That's what Josh Pate was mentioning so many years ago about the idea of players potentially sitting out of playoff games. That's what he was referring to, probably. At least that's what I'm starting to gather now, that's what he was referring to. And that's what sort of I was referring to, too. But then again, people didn't listen to us, and that's fine. Like, if you don't want to listen to us, you don't want to listen to the folks who actually care about the well-being of the sport, the well-being of college football in general. That's fine. You don't have to listen to the show, but we'd like you to. But look, that's your constitutional right to do so, and that's fine. But for people like me, we care about the well-being of the sport and what we're dealing with right now. I think this whole situation with Nico in Tennessee was an eyebrow raiser for a lot of people. And hopefully this will be the beginning of changes to come. But unfortunately, it's going to take a while. It's not something that is going to be implemented quickly. But I'll just say this and we'll move on. Just being able to implement the stuff beforehand, or at least have some sort of structure and have, some sort of a standard to prevent situations like this, like what happened with Nico in Tennessee, from happening. Like, it is like we're trying to build the Burj Khalifa or the World Trade Center. Like, it's not that hard. It's not some complicated math problem that we have to, get the calculators out and get the whiteboard out and, do all these different equations. Not that hard. It's not. It should not be this hard. It should not be this hard to prevent something like what happened on Friday and this weekend from happening. It should not be that hard. But for some people, it is that hard, and it just is what it is right now. Nothing I can do about it unless talk about it. And the more and more we get people to talk about this, and more we get people to sort of get on this idea of, how badly the sport needs structure and we need certain guardrails being put in place. And I saw Clyde talking about it. I saw Pat McAfee talk about it. I saw folks on, programs like First Take and whatnot. And grant you, some of those shows are mostly geared towards the NFL, but they're talking about it. Now, I haven't watched all of everyone, but shows like Matt, guys like Pat McAfee, Joel Klatt, Josh Pate, Cover 3, I guess me. We care. We still care about the sport, and we want it to thrive. We're not rooting for the sport to get destroyed. We're rooting for it to succeed. And it's not succeeding right now. It's not doing too well. It's not healthy. I guess you can look at us like healthcare providers, right? We're trying to identify the problem, but we're not the ones in charge of the sport. It's sad when the people who are not in charge of the sport are the ones who are diagnosing the problem, but the folks who supposedly are in charge of the sport are not doing anything to help out. So, and look, and also, by the way, too, as we wrap this up, we've been going for over 30 minutes on this. We're almost 30 minutes. If you want the U.S. government to help you out on this, and we don't really talk about politics on here that much, but just in general, and we'll move on. Don't really think that the government's going to help you out. That's all I'm just going to say. I don't think necessarily reaching out to the government is a good thing, or at least in this situation, because there's other issues they need to figure out. I think it's pretty clear if you pay attention to the news. But anyway, that's it for the Nico stuff, and hopefully we don't need to discuss this anymore, or at least to that extent. So I'm going to some water here. Been talking for a while. Voices sound like it's about to go out, but trust me, it's not. We're still doing pretty well. Sort of a continuation, but also not too related, but also related. A new outlook on the spring portal, and then we'll get into some other topics, and then we'll get into some Q&A. Oh man, I just love whenever you get one of those ice cubes and you're drinking, especially if you have like water like me, this Yeti I have. I don't know, it's just something refreshing about eating the ice cubes. I know it's not recommended to do, but especially on a hot day today, like it is here in Jacksonville, like I mentioned during the pre-show, it's gonna be around 90 most of the week. Now today and tomorrow and Wednesday are going to be a little bit cooler because there's a front moving in tonight. Or I guess a surface boundary, I guess. Around this time of the year, it's not really a cold front. But it's still going to be really warm. Like, towards the end of the week, it's going to be around 90. So, I don't know, just something satisfying about eating a really cold ice cube. And just as refreshing of water, right? As water, because it is water. Spring portal outlook. Look, we talked about this on the Thursday show, ironically, not knowing this is going to happen. I thought because of what happened last year and folks like Pate, who were sort of trying to ring the bell saying, hey, guys, I think some movement's happening. And then it turns out that wasn't the case because certain collectives were paying up a little bit. Well, I'm not necessarily going to go full heel turn on going from them. I'm not really expecting that much to, oh, man, the portal's going to absolutely explode and, go full doomsday scenario. I'm going to go that far. But this whole Nico situation and the fact that this has happened kind of makes you raise your eyebrows a little bit as to what else could happen. Now, and again, we've been hearing some names entering in, but it's the typical, starters or guys who are losing battles, especially like QB battles. We're seeing some of that happen, which is not shocking. But what I am wondering, much like a lot of folks, is with the Nico situation, him moving on, him being the biggest dominoes so far in the second spring window, transfer window, could we see more names? Could we see more teams like, for example, Penn State? They need receivers. There's no doubt in my mind. They need well, not new receivers, but they need help. Ohio State, we'll talk about them here in just a minute, or a little bit of the spring game thought. So they need help on the defensive line. Could we see some moves there? Could we see some other situations where, because if there's no guardrails and stuff, who's to say players don't see this Nico situation and go, maybe I should get more money and I can be on the move too. I can go somewhere else. I'm not insinuating that's going to be the case for everyone, but I'm just saying it's interesting. It sort of rose eyebrows a little bit when it happened, that maybe we should recalibrate the portal outlook. Maybe we should think about maybe a couple big names coming in. Of course, the big player in this, for quarterback, at least in terms of receiving one at the moment, is Tennessee. They are in the market for a quarterback. Again, like I mentioned, I have the George kid who is a freshman, I believe, and Merlinger, that's how you say his name. So they're there. I think Merlinger is more than capable to be a starter, I think. Though we don't know that for sure, right? He hasn't really played that much. But I think the reasonable expectation here is that Tennessee will be in the market if we're in big game hunting for a quarterback again, because of the SEC bylaws. Interconference transferring not allowed, so you have to think outside the box. Go to, I don't know, the loser of the Ohio State quarterback battle. Maybe you go elsewhere, right? Go to Oregon, maybe. That's been thrown around. Some other quarterbacks that, I don't know. I may as well just go and say it. A couple of names that have been brought up, like Avery Johnson at Kansas State, Rocco Beck, who, by the way, did have offers last year to leave, especially some schools in the southeastern region. Not going to get too specific on that, but I do have my suspicions on who one of those schools were. He's going to be a good commodity as well, right? But Elliott brought it up yesterday, right? Iowa State, you lost a lot of your receiver production. Beck, again, tried the transfer waters this time last year. Will he do it again? Will Tennessee? I think a lot of people will agree they are a very big NIL sort of machine. Not so much in recruiting. Now, they're doing well in recruiting. I'm not saying like Josh Heupel's an idiot, but I do kind of agree with Bud Elliott yesterday when he mentioned that Heupel is not the best recruiter, but Tennessee is really, really good, much like Ole Miss and some of these other schools, Florida State being another one, that do really well when NIL was really, really good. And I think for Tennessee, they have a lot of money. Of course, the connections, right? The Pilot Flying J, the guy who owns the Browns, Haslam, or one of the owners. He's obviously going to help out here with the money. But someone like an Avery Johnson, someone like a Rocco Beck, those are some names that I would be looking at, right, out of conference, especially in the Big 12. I think that would be a place that would be reasonable, especially with other schools who don't necessarily have the money necessarily to pay up. Another school, too, I would look at, or at least say another potential here. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. None of these are guaranteed, right? Avery Johnson, Marco Beck, those are just names I'm mentioning. I think Beck is the more interesting one because, again, he did play the portal game this time last year, and there were people like Josh Pate confirmed it months ago that, yes, he was getting offers to leave, which was something he was hiding. And I would assume that's the case again, given that the Tennessee quarterback situation is what it is right now. But another one, just keep an eye on here, is Byron Brown, the quarterback of South Florida. Alex Galesh, former one of the OCs at Tennessee under Heupel for a number of years. He leaves, takes that job, completely turns it around. I think Galesh will probably get a big job here soon just because of his pedigree. His offense has been pretty good. And again, he took over a really, really bad South Florida program that was winning like 2 games a year, and then all of a sudden they're winning bowl games again. Byron Brown, because of that style, because of that system, because of Alex and Heupel, of course, being friends. I think they're actually even family friends, I believe. That would probably be, in my opinion, if I was to do the tier listing here, Byron Brown's my number one pick here. At least the one name I can see reasonably going with there. Like, that would be my betting favorite. Now, if you're South Florida, Alex Gillespie, you're kind of like, man, this kind of sucks, right? I mean, if you're on Alex Gillespie, look, I get it, but man, Byron Brown's just been a good asset for us, and we kind of needed him to develop a little bit more, and he's kind of why our offense is so good. But then again, I would imagine he would understand, right? His buddy needs some help. He lost his starting quarterback. So Byron Brown, a USF quarterback, that would be one I would be just paying attention to if you're a Tennessee fan. That would be one I would not be the least surprising one, as I would say. Now, the most surprising would probably be someone like an Avery Johnson or like a Lincoln Kindholz, I believe, at Ohio State. Someone like that would be one that I would be surprised with. But yeah, the spring portal again. We'll see again. We were getting this. People were saying this stuff last year about, oh man, the spring portal is gonna absolutely explode and big names are coming up. Then again, we saw a lot of these collectives pay up. Is that gonna be the case this time around? We'll see. There's a lot of rumors too about last year Kyron Drones leaving. Albeit I've not been too impressed with him, but then again, we said that about. Or a lot of folks said that about Hendon Hooker, and then he goes to Tennessee and almost was a Heisman finalist. So that's our name too, I guess. If you're looking at the ACC, I guess Kyron Drones could be fun too. But yeah, spring outlook change potentially. Again, I'm not necessarily guaranteeing it will be a wild portal, but it just gets you thinking now, since there is a big fish in the pond. Does that necessarily mean that there will be some big news coming in? Surely does mean that, but we'll see. Some spring game thoughts here. I guess, if you will, several schools had spring games. Most of these were not televised, so the information here is pretty limited, unless you're on message boards or whatnot. For example, Alabama. Ty Simpson, probably going to be QB1. Ryan Grubb, I believe, was available to the media after the spring game, I believe, and he sort of hinted at Simpson, he's going to win the job, which is no shock here. Guys like Josh Pate, Cover 3 were saying this. I acknowledge him basically saying, yeah, Ty Simpson's probably going to be your favorite here. No shocker. He's probably going to be winning the starting job. Look, I mean, there's some concerns here, right? The fact that he didn't beat out Milroe the past couple of years and he had opportunities to do that. He's also a coach's son, so you would imagine that would help out a little bit, him having a lot of knowledge of the game. He was a former 4-star kid. Again, that's a concern there. The fact that, the staff, when Milroe was struggling last year, they didn't try to bring Simpson in as a relief. But look, could be a total nothing burger. Simpson could go out there, week 1 in Tallahassee at Doak Campbell Stadium, which will be finished and will be renovated. He goes out there and looks like Heisman Trophy candidate week 1, which a lot of players do look like that. So that one looks like that QB battle's winding down. Auburn receivers are looking good as usual. Deuce Knight, by the way, looked pretty good. Now, I'm not expecting Deuce Knight to start. I think the plan is similar to Bama with Keelan Russell, is to have him sort of sit. He may come in, right, because the retro rule that was introduced like 10 years ago, that you can play 10 games. Excuse me. You can play 5 games, and then you can redshirt. So I would imagine Deuce Knight will play a little bit, especially in mop-up duty, especially with the FCS team. But I'm not expecting him to be the starter, right? I think Jackson Arnold, you'd reasonably expect him to be the starter. Ohio State, D-line needs some help. I watched some of the spring game. Offense was fine, whatever. But the defensive line there, yeah, they need some help. I think they'll be a big player in the portal, especially with that no SEC interconference rule. I think Ohio State, especially the SEC D-line rooms, so think of some of the best ones down there. Don't be surprised if you see one of those rooms getting rated by Ohio State. They need help there. Of course, if the new defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, coming in, they're going to want some depth there, and I think they clearly need help. So some thoughts here in the spring game. Don't know a whole lot because, again, they don't have traditional spring games anymore for most of these. It is what it is. Again, another thing, too, that may not be an issue, but will become an issue. And there's actually a question in the rapid fire that deals with spring games and something that is sad and sort of deals into that. So, yeah, some thoughts on the spring stuff. Camp's wrapping up. Again, because of most of these not being televised on TV, you can't watch any of these, and you have to get information from like Twitter or find a way to get information from articles. So there's that. Speaking of quarterbacks, sort of teased us a little bit just a few minutes ago. Who are the best returning QBs in the Power Four? Because now with Nico moving on, you lose one. I think that would have been everyone's go-to number one, right? In terms of potential and what he did last year. Now he's gone. So who are the best ones? There's some names on here. Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht, mentioned them from the Big 12. Those ones are kind of obvious. Some of them, especially Johnson, would like him to improve a little bit, take the next step. He struggled a little bit last year of turnovers. Becht, again, like a lot of folks have been mentioning, losing a lot of good receiver talent. Hopefully they can get some in the portal. They could be a big player here, but that's a school that typically does not recruit receivers that well. So that's but again, he's still talented. Like Rocco Becht is not an idiot, right? He's still really gonna be good. Whether or not he's gonna have a good receiver room to throw to, concerning. We'll see what Matt Campbell and them do, but he's a veteran guy. And again, like I mentioned in the portal segment, that's a name just to keep an eye on because of what happened last year. Kate Klubnik, another one at Clemson. Remember when Garrett Riley's first game as the OC? By the way, for those who don't know, he's your brother, Lincoln Riley, younger brother. When Garrett Riley first got there at Clemson, their first game against Duke, remember how bad it was? People were bashing Garrett Riley. Man, what a stupid hire. What happened towards the end of that year and last year? They're pretty good. Clemson was good on offense last year. Now the receivers need some help with that, and I think there's some younger guys that are getting better. Probably the best receiver room Clemson has had in a long time. They used to be pretty good at getting guys into the NFL and really good in recruiting. But Klubnik, Garrett Riley, again, year 3. I'm doing the fingers crossed here, the hand gesture. Of course, you can't see me. But, yeah, Kate Klubnik would be up there. Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Big one here. I mean, people forget he's back, right? He got the waiver after the whole lawsuit things. Like he's back. Could be the best quarterback in the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier could be a favorite with Pavia as well. Could be a Heisman Trophy favorite as well. Very, very experienced. He's another sort of like Ty Simpson, a coach's son. His dad was the OC at Bama when they won those championships with Nick Saban back in the 2010s and whatnot. They have a wild card here, Taylor Green at Arkansas. Surprisingly, sneakily had a really good year last year. Good old Bobby Petrino back there as the OC. I think a lot of folks don't really remember Green because, again, Arkansas, I mean, they were okay last year, right? I mean, he had some bad games, like Auburn game. They won, by the way, but for those who don't remember, that was a horrific game from the Auburn offense as much as it was from the Arkansas offense. It was bad both ways. But Taylor Green, besides that game, had a really good year. He's a good runner, good dual threat. I think Taylor Green next year, this coming up season, he could surprise some people. He could very, very, very much end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Of course, Nervine could bring up as DJ Vlago, but he wasn't a starter the entire year, so that doesn't really count. But he would be an honorable mention, I guess. But he hasn't started a full year yet. So these are guys who have started a full year. So again, think Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht, Kate Klubnik, Diego Pavia, Nussmeier, Green, Arch Manning. Not on here because he was not the starter last year. So much like some of the other schools, you lost quarterbacks. Of course, Nico would have been up here, but not anymore. So that's a pretty good list, I think. That's a pretty reasonable list here. I think it's not an exhaustive list, right? It's not like these are in order. But, yeah, I think the one that is really going to catch some people off guard is Taylor Green. I think Taylor Green is a really good quarterback. He would be a starter. I think a lot of teams would want him as a starter for a lot of places. Another one, too, I forgot to mention, or could have mentioned, would be Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Now, he was, as Tom Formanelli says, he was the turnover king last year. He was the whoopsie-daisy king, right? Threw a lot of touchdowns, also threw a lot of picks and turnovers. Sort of like 2019 Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, right? A lot of fun, but also if he can refine himself a little bit, Jonathan Smith, second year there, cut down the turnovers a little bit, could be up there too, right? Hey, Childs he's a former 4-star, 5-star guy. I mean, he has a lot of talent, dual threat guy, good runner, can throw the ball really well, but you don't necessarily know where the ball is going. That's kind of the whole stick with him. So yeah, that's kind of like the list here. Because again, I think a lot of folks are wondering that, who were the best returning starters in the Power Four, especially, and that's probably the list I would go with. At least for me. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments. One little thing here before you get to the rapid fire Q&A. Fantastic Four released a new clip. Twitter account. They've been doing this for the past several Sundays at 7 o'clock, right? It's a clip from the trailer of Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards saying, he's explaining, this is in the trailers too, of like him explaining to the news reporter that, we have family dinner here at 7 o'clock, yada, yada, yada. That Twitter account has been posting that clip for the past month or so. I mean, that's fine, right? It's kind of a joke, right? Hey, we're literally posting this on Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern, I guess, or whatever. But this past Sunday, they did not do that. They were actually late, 44 minutes on the dot, late. They put out a new clip, right? It's footage. Of course, I'm not going to play it here, but you can find it on YouTube and whatnot, probably on Twitter. Just go to the Fantastic Four account. But it's a clip of Johnny Storm, Joseph Quinn, sitting there. He's eating cereal, by the way. The box, too, the cereal boxes he's eating out of. The box art is actually art from the comics, so that's kind of cool. But he's sitting there eating cereal. Sue and Reed show up, and they're late, and they're kind of talking. It's a very short clip, but a little bit different than the recent ones, and it certainly does sort of feed into the rumors rumors and theories going around about why Marvel has been posting clips about the Fantastic Four having dinner at a certain time on Sunday, and people, maybe that is something to do with Galactus coming in. Maybe that's them sort of positioning themselves to be ready when he shows up. Could be like that. But well, that's cool, and the clip was fine and everything. I know a lot of folks are still kind of confused as to what the marketing is for this movie, though, which is fair to say, though. There's some reports that have been coming out, at least people rumblings, if you will, I guess, that a new trailer will be attached to Thunderbolts more than likely. But I wanted to address, too, and I mentioned this a little bit on Thursday, that there have been some concerns about Fantastic Four. As much as we've been praising the movie, yes, the first trailer was great, albeit the marketing around it, the fact that the live stream began but then had a countdown clock for another hour was a little bit weird. Besides that, everything's been good. I've been hearing a lot of good things about it. But some of the recent stuff, like, for example, the recent, Entertainment Weekly article or something like that, some article that came out last week, a lot of folks were up in arms about it, particularly with Joseph Quinn's interview. Him and Kevin Feige sort of talking about Johnny Storm and how they're. I guess you can read the article. I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but just some people when they're reading it, a little bit concerned about, hey, are they, deviating from the character necessarily? I would assume that the clip they released on Sunday was sort of a damage control PR move, because the clip that got released sort of calmed the waters a little bit. I think some folks watched it and went, oh, okay, that sounds like Johnny Storm from the previous movies a little bit. But I think what that article that was released towards the end of last week, at least the stuff with with Joseph Quinn and Feige talking, wasn't necessarily they were like trying to change the character. I think what they were trying to get, or at least what I got out of it, now I could be wrong here, was that they were trying to distance themselves from the previous versions, and that they weren't copying them. Like, they were not trying to mimic like the Chris Evans version, the Michael B. Jordan version, which I think some folks don't, or at least didn't get that. At least that's what I got out of it. Now, I could be totally wrong, but at least that's what I got out of it. And there's also other concerns too, like, some of the rumors and leaks about, for example, like the female surfer, and some of the recent, well, not recent, but the old leaks about, Marvel when they were casting, and right, and they were, real rumors, by the way. This is real, by the way. I'm not making this up, that they were meeting with Mila Kunis, who is from Family Guy, who plays Meg, I believe, her for being the Thing. That was real. There's also a lot of rumors about how the Sue Storm character, Vanessa Kirby, she'll be sort of leaving the movie, and that's got a lot of folks concerned for different reasons. I'm not diving into that here. Look, there's some concerns here. Look, I'm not saying that this movie is guaranteed to be a hit. It's not guaranteed. Would I like it to be a hit? Yeah, I mean, I think Marvel would really like that. Even despite the fact that, we have Thunderbolts coming on, that from what we were hearing, that is doing really, really well. And they just announced that the review, the times you can release your reviews, like the initial reviews, like the really short ones and the full length ones, are pretty early, which is good. That's usually a pretty good sign. It's a bad sign when it's like before, like right before the movie comes out. But they needed some wins here, and I think Marvel with Fantastic Four, if it is indeed, and all these other concerns are sort of not really that valid, or at least not that really relevant to the actual movie, or at least they're not that big of a deal. I think it should be fine, but look, are you wrong for being concerned? Are you wrong for seeing a lot of this promotional stuff and some of the rumors too that have been flying around out there on Reddit and stuff like that? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it's worrisome to a certain extent. I mean, we just want. I think what Marvel fans want is just a good movie, right? You just want a good Fantastic Four movie, one that's actually done properly this time and not sloppily done. The Josh Trank version. We just want a proper Fantastic Four movie. That's all we want, right? You just want it done properly. The footage that we have seen has sort of vindicated that and sort of hinting that that will be the case, hopefully. But those some leaks and rumors have sort of gotten people concerned. And look, again, that's understandable. I get that, but I will judge the movie for when it comes out. And if it's garbage, it's garbage. And if it's good, it's good. And I think that's the way I will be approaching the movie. I'm not going to sit here and keeping on, like bashing it until I've really actually gotten a formal opinion on it. But look, would I be lying to you if I am a little bit concerned about, is it going to be terrible and stuff? Of course. Now, will I use those concerns as to like, oh man, this is going to be the end all be all, the final judgment on this movie? No, of course not. That'll be like me judging College Football 25 last year, and saying, oh man, initially they didn't allow player editing. That sucks. This game's gonna suck. Well, no, look, that's concerning. Was there gonna be like the end all be all for me not buying it? No, of course I'm gonna still buy it. Of course. Now, of course, they eventually added in some new stuff and they allowed you to edit the AI generated recruits, but when that initially was the idea, before the game came out, that wasn't like going to derail my thoughts on that. Like I wasn't going to boycott the game because they don't allow player editing at all until they changed it in recent and updates months after. So yeah, look, there's concerns out there. I totally understand that, but we'll see. Again, most of the footage they've been showing I've liked, and I think some of the stuff that came out from CinemaCon a couple weeks ago has been pretty positive. So I'm not too concerned, but we're monitoring it. Some Q&A here. Some of these we'll kind of go through pretty quickly here, and we'll wrap up the show. First one here is what is your reaction to the photos surfacing from spring games showing low attendance? This was something I was hinting at earlier when we were going over the actual spring stuff, I guess, like the wrap up for all these programs. For the games who were either on TV or not on TV, a lot of things were leaking out. Well, it's not leaking out, but photos were being published of, for example, a lot of them on Twitter of just low attendance. For example, the famous one is the Bama spring game, right? You have the game last year, the last traditional spring game, at least I guess for the foreseeable future. Last year, Kellen DeBoer's first year, you had like 50,000 people show up, and then this year here you have like 15,000. I'll be honest, this made me sad. It really did. It made me sad. The fact that this is where we're at right now, the low attendance numbers, the fact that you have a lot of, basically some of these photos are literally just showcasing empty stadiums, even though it was open to the public. Much like I mentioned earlier, and I will not go on a whole another rant about this, but once again, this is another one of these consequences where people say, oh yeah, spring games, maybe we should cancel them. Okay, look, if you want to say that, okay, you say that, but then you see photos this weekend and you see low attendance numbers. And then it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs, and all of a sudden becomes a big avalanche. Again, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be, the negative Nelson here, but these low attendance numbers is yet again another sort of canary in the coal mine event of, look, it might not be a big deal now that attendance numbers are low, but 10 or so years from now, we will look back at this and go, man, this was a warning sign. This was it. This was our, iceberg yet ahead. But no one's listening right now. And I hope people are listening. And I hope people do look at those photos that are been surfacing on social media of this low attendance compared to last year and go, do we want college football to be like this? Do we want spring games to go the way of the dinosaurs or go the way of the steam engine? I don't. I would much prefer to have spring football be irrelevant. I would want it to be something that fans can go to and students can go to and celebrate the football team and make it a family weekend, especially if you're alumni who don't usually, because of work or whatever reasons, you can't go to games in the fall. That was their sort of workaround to go to a spring game and go there and have fun and take your young ones to campus or friends or whatnot and say, hey, I used to, I had a lot of memories in this dorm room, or I had a lot of memories in this, this classroom or whatever, or this building or whatever, or the library on campus. Like, those are things that are going to go away because if you're changing the format, you're making it to just a generic event you could go to during the summer or whatever. I like I mentioned before, say it again, I don't like it. I think this and the fact that these photos are getting a lot of negative reaction to, not that the photos exist, but just the fact that this is the reality of this situation. And I think I just hope your voices are being heard, and my voices are being heard as well. But yeah, I saw it this weekend. Sad, very, very. It hurt, man. It really did. And didn't have to be like this. Didn't have to be like this. Next question: can Texas A&M ever win a title? They can. They just haven't done it. Again, it's the classic cannot versus have not. They have not done it. They can do it. They have the ability to do it. I know a lot of folks have opinions on A&M. A lot of folks don't like the culture, don't like the fans, don't like the traditions, don't like the dog or whatever. Look, you can have your own opinions on it. But from what I know, from the industry insiders who have said this publicly, A&M has everything they need, or at least they have everything you want for a national title contender. They have the facilities, they have the fan base, they have the money, because a lot of these folks, the boosters, the donors, are oil people and railroad people who have a lot of inherited wealth. The money's all there. The facilities are all there. In fact, the facility's been around for 10 years. I mean, even with Kevin Sutherland, who we talked about last week when he was the head coach, the facilities are upgraded quickly. They have everything you want there. They have everything available to you. They have every single resource, every single button's there. They have, when you're a new coach there, for example, being this time Mike Elko, you don't have to have a whole lot of yeses being said, because those yeses were already mentioned or already answered years ago under previous administrations, right? Jimbo Fisher, Kevin Sutherland. Yes, there was no success or in return on investment, but those fans invest, the boosters invest, the stadium, the stadium upgrades, everything that's been changed over there, everything that you need for a title contender in 2025, you have it there at Texas A&M. Everything you need in the modern era to be successful, A&M has it. Not just the facility upgrades, but the nutrition, strength and conditioning, ability to hire other coaches or other, members of our coaching staff, organization, stuff like that. That's all there. That's all there at Texas A&M. They just haven't done it yet. They have not put it all together. Some of it because of the actual coaching, some of it because of talent, some of it's because of both. Mike Elko, I think, is done with the staff hiring. They're doing well in recruiting. They've done pretty well in portal too, getting some really good receivers, but they just haven't done it yet. They can do it. There's nothing in the U.S. Constitution or the article or the Bill of Rights or anything like that that restricts A&M for being successful. Like, there's no rules or regulations that handcuff Texas A&M from being good. The only thing that's been sitting in their way is themselves. And as long as they have the right coach in there, the right organization, can have everything else, the facilities, whatnot, all it takes is to hiring the right guy. They have not done it lately. Can Mike Elko be the first time they have hired correctly? Third time's a charm, maybe, but we'll see. But I think again, it's just really hard to paint this picture for you because I think a lot of people who are the casuals out there, folks who are mainly just NFL flybys, they see Texas A&M and go, yeah, they have a lot of good NFL talent, but where's the national titles and stuff like that? Well, like I just said, they have everything is all there. You're right about that, but they just haven't done it yet. Doesn't mean they can't do it. They haven't done it yet. Last question here. Of course, with Star Wars Celebration coming up, and by the way, on Thursday we'll have a more exhaustive topic on that because it is approaching, as I mentioned earlier. But question here: what is the next animated Star Wars show? So, of course, we got a couple of weeks ago the Tales of the Underworld, I believe. That was announced. And that's a mini series I'll be releasing on May 4th. That's been sort of the standard the past 3 years or so. What is the next long form show? Because of course we got Bad Batch last year that ended. Of course, now what's the next show? Well, according to Josh over at Den of Nerds, back during one of his videos a couple weeks ago, he mentioned a Darth Maul show, like a Crimson Dawn show that could be happening. We'll see about that, if that is true or not. Now, look, I definitely think Josh's source is really good. I think of course, Josh is not dumb. Of course, he's been doing this for a long time, but if that is true, interesting, right? It'll be, of course, in that Clone Wars style animation. There'll be a lot of connections too. This will be before Rebels, so you'll maybe get some crossover there, probably involve the Mandalorians and whatnot. Of course, it'll pick up right after season 7, so it'll be after Revenge of the Sith. It'll be taking place during Bad Batch, and it'll be interesting to see if that is the case and if Josh is correct. But we'll talk about this a little bit more on Thursday. But I will just say this, and then we'll just end the show. I don't expect a whole lot of announcements from Celebration this year. I'm not the only one who's thinking that way. Josh over at Devin Nerds, who the same person that told him this in the Ahsoka leaks, they also echo that don't expect a whole lot of major new things being announced, and I totally believe that. Reasons for that, we'll dive on Thursdays. That's why I have to watch all these shows to get that. So, like I just said, we'll be back on Thursday, same time as usual, around 2 o'clock Eastern time. Again, if anything breaks, if anything happens, especially like college ball and stuff like that, of course, we'll do an individual clip. But for the most part, we'll be back on Thursday, same as usual. Like I said, we're getting pretty close to team projections, so record projections, so your best case, worst case, most reasonable. We'll be doing that. Of course, since we started the show back in June last year, we couldn't space it out properly. But now, since we're getting close to doing this for a whole year, we can do that. We have the authority now to space it out properly. So that means we can start doing season previews a little bit earlier, not having to jam like 3 of those in a show. So we'll be starting those here in a couple weeks, around May 1st. I think we'll get those started. And of course, a lot of things will start happening. Again, we have SEC spring meetings happening soon. They'll be taking place around Memorial Day, a little bit before that. But it's going to be a fun summer, I think. I think the end of spring will be fun as well. Even though it's been kind of scary lately with the stuff going on with Nico in Tennessee, and what's the future of college football. This show's not going anywhere. Regardless of where the sport goes, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. But I think now that we've been doing this for almost a year now, we got a pretty good clip. We got a pretty good rhythm, I guess. Now we have a better schedule of doing things, and at the moment, that's the way it's going to be. We'll have the team projections, and of course, we'll react to the Celebration stuff after this weekend. If something big breaks and we get like a big major news announcement, I'll maybe do an individual video in the evening on a Saturday or Sunday. So keep an eye on that. But of course, we'll have our show Thursday, and we'll go over reasonable expectations for Celebration. Of course, Daredevil, Born Again Season 1 will be ending tonight. We'll probably do a topic on that either on Thursday or next week. But yeah, so that's it for the show today. Again, make sure you subscribe, like the videos and stuff, like the streams. Follow us on Twitter. Again, we have 5 subscribers. Again, we are not the best show for college football, but we're certainly the newest. We are very young. We've been around for almost a year now. We're getting close to 100 episodes, so it's been a blast. And looking forward to that 100 episode, man. That's gonna be insane. That when we get to that episode list, and can't believe it. Can't believe we've been doing this for this long. I can't believe the show's over too. So at least this episode's over. So again, until Thursday, take care. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and your Wednesday. Until then, take care, and we'll see you guys then.